Hey folks, it's Lindsey Huddleston back in the building. The SPS Edge, that is. Talking about the SPS Edge show with my guy, the very capable Terry McCord Jr., my co-host, as well as intern. And this month is moving along, so we're going to be changing that title really soon. But I also want to thank Coach Orlando Watkins. It's his first day of practice. He's been pleasantly surprised with the positivity happening with the Northwestern program. Not surprised with him being a great coach and a great leader. But Terry, here we are, man. We're going to get it rocking right here on the show. In a second, I think the facial recognition part is going to change, and then we'll be able to get you front and center. But tell us what's going on, Terry.
It's been good. I've been doing well. Just, sleepless nights with the election going on, just hearing the talks about it all day and all night. Because of that, I've been watching some MAC football. They just started yesterday night. Western Michigan, shout out Ladarius Jefferson, transfer from MSU to Western Michigan. They got their first win of the season against Akron. And so, I've been watching that, just keep my mind, taking breaks. So, yeah, so just taking breaks and checking back.
Now, when you talk about the election, man, I found myself checking the election results in the middle, like I do when I go to sleep on the finals, like one of them game fours or what. You may go to sleep. You be waking up in the middle of the night looking for it. And man, it had the same feeling, but it's amazing that I can equate the two, but I got to admit, and maybe this will come up a little later with some of the great topics you have discussing. Man, it was a lot of little, anxiety, because I think my initial anxiety is like, why is it so close? But then I also realized too, which may be playing out, is the fact that so many people voted in advance, voted prior to the election day. So we weren't really seeing those results. We were seeing kind of like just the election day stuff. But like I said, man, it got me in a twist. But as the hours went on and the day or so went on, I started to get a little more relief in where we are. I just hope that we can continue to keep a level of civility going on. And I do know that that took place when Vice President Biden made a speech and he talked about unity. I think that was really important. So tell us, Terry, what we have on the menu for today. I think we got a great list of topics. I'm excited to dive in all of them. And you've done an excellent job in producing this show and bringing together these topics. So tell us what you got.
So, just first off, just touching on the big win. Coach Tucker's first win in the Michigan State rivalry game. He's 1-0. Michigan State big time underdogs in that game and coming out stunning the Wolverines. So that part, we got to touch on that part. We recently saw Rich Paul, NBA agent Rich Paul of Clutch Sports, hosted a pro day for Tyrese Maxey and Anthony Edwards. Agents weren't really feeling that, but he didn't break the rules. We'll get into it later, but we obviously got to touch on that, making big moves for his clients. And then lastly, just talking about how LeBron James and other athletes, intimidating, politicians like Trump and those that are trying to continuously push that white supremacist agenda, and guys like LeBron James that are, giving them some fright, like they're putting some fear in them. So it's a good thing for LeBron to catch those people's attention. So it's been good.
No, you're right, man. I remember, and I appreciate you sending me a note regarding that issue with LeBron James and how the president was leading chants at a rally saying LeBron James sucks. I mean, how low have we stooped when an American president, a sitting American president, has to call out an athlete and get people to rile up? Because it's almost like to say he's competing with LeBron James. Not that LeBron James needed validation or credibility, but Donald Trump leading those chants does that. And that's just amazing to me. So yeah, that's a great lineup, man. I'm excited. As you were talking, what I did, I think we can take advantage of this, and this will be something great for our listeners. I am going to play a quick interview question I had with Coach Mel Tucker this week on Tuesday at his weekly press conference. It'll take a few minutes, but I think it'll give us some great context, Terry, about what's going on. So you good if I play that?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay, great. We're only going to get audio, but here we go. As a matter of fact, I can actually share the screen with this because I'm a little technically savvy. I got that from Coach Watkins, you know what I'm saying? So let me see what I can do to get this going. I think this would be pretty cool. Give me 1 second. We'll pull it up there. We'll share. Now the screen is in effect. So here we go. and this just took place actually on election day. And I actually commented on Coach Tucker's comments that he's going to make regarding the election. Well, he made some comments prior to this recording about the election and about unity. But here we go. Comment on calling for unity. Well, what I want to talk to you about culture. We've been hearing your players and your coaches all talk about the buy-in, and we hear that terminology so much with no real evidence other places. But clearly there's evidence that there is buy-in. So what is it about your players' character, these coaches, and even your approach that is leading to so much evidence of real buy-in here at Michigan State?
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay, for that question. Culture is huge, I believe. I really think that that's the foundation. That's the key to any organization. When putting the staff together, first and foremost, I wanted to make sure that we had coaches of high character that were very team oriented and unselfish, and that understood the importance of buying into something that's bigger than themselves. And so all of our coaches are like that. And so that really helps me as the head coach really set the tone for the culture, and then ask my staff to help convey that message to the players. We have spent a lot of time working to connect personally with our players, even throughout this COVID situation. And that goes a long way. Our language, words we use and things we say are very consistent, and there's substance behind those words. Culture is not just slogans or signage on the walls. It's how we live and how we work and how we treat each other, day in and day out, and how we go about our business. And from that standpoint, I believe that our players, what they've seen from us as a coaching staff and what we've talked about is really resonated with them. It makes sense to them. And it's day in and day out. It's very consistent. And players see the value in a consistent, process-driven organization with coaches and leaders that have done it before and have had success. And so the buy-in has been there with our players, but however you're always hammering culture. You're always looking to get better. You're always selling your program. Recruiting is not just recruiting high school players. I was taught a long time ago that you have to recruit your own players every day. And so you're always selling, and making sure that you're working to capture the minds of your student athletes, and meet them where they are, so that you can give them what they need and help them to understand how buying into the culture, how it helps them individually on and off the field, and how it helps the team.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was a lot of information right there, and I appreciate Coach Tucker for being so open and sharing and doing that, Terry. So from what he shared there, what's your take on some of the nuggets that he left and shared?
I think, just going off of last week's win, I think it goes to show how much he's, how much intensity he's put to this rebuilding process. I mean, I remember people had been critiquing Coach Harbaugh and how he takes his rivalry. I mean, is he taking it serious? Is the same intensity that he's once brought in the past, and now, it's kind of diminished. So, I mean, we're kind of seeing Coach Tucker realize and understand that MSU was some point at that prestige of like getting those recruits, and was like highly was highly picked, being in like their playoff runs, and Big Ten championship wins and all that under the D'Antonio era. So D'Antonio had his own culture, his own kind of way of going about things, the blue collar attitude, the gritty, grimy, kind of work hard, underdog attitude. And so Coach Tucker is kind of inheriting that culture, and now he's in a sense of mind, to make his own way, make his own culture in this in this great program at MSU. So I think we're starting to see that. I was really excited to see that because the first week, I mean, it didn't look so hot, but knowing and him coming out and
that
being
looked
like,
horrible. 7 turnovers and losing to Rutgers,
exactly,
the doormat of the Big Ten, as they said.
Yeah, and so just going off the turnovers, he flat out said, "We're disappointed. We know you're disappointed," and like just coming out and giving that mindset of no excuses, and then coming into this week a big time game on the road, even though no crowd, but you still got to travel to their place and play your game, and to have 0 turnovers. Still gave up 5 penalties, but Lombardi was throwing the ball. Ricky White, was climbing up them record books per game.
Slick Rick.
So I mean, that was his signature game, and I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago where if he won this game and didn't win another, I think it'd be a good season. So I think that was really good for him to get that win. I see more to come.
No, Terry, that's a very good perspective on sports, and I think you are right. As sad as it may sound, but if he lost out, which I don't think is going to happen, but if it did, people say, you know what? But we beat Michigan. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
No, man, the Coach Tucker era has been amazing from day one. I talk about the grace he had in dealing with that Rutgers loss because, again, as people affectionately refer to Rutgers as the doormat of the Big Ten. But people got to know Rutgers had a new coach, too, who had an NFL pedigree. So, it was really an iron sharpens iron type situation with Coach Shano of Rutgers and Coach Tucker going up against each other. They had a great respect for each other. The Rutgers coach said some great things about Coach Tucker also after the game. And he had a little bit more of an advantage because unlike Coach Tucker, he didn't come in February post-COVID trying to get something going. He was dealing with that team last season. And I think there's an excellent transition you have as I continue to sing Coach Tucker's praises. And I kind of want to intertwine it with this next point you brought up, and I'll let you introduce it, but you were really talking about, let's talk about Michigan now, and what was the question you were posing about Michigan and Jim Harbaugh right now, Terry?
I think when is it going to be that time in that moment where they start to look at how are we going to keep paying this man all this money to not win these marquee games, like these rivalry games that you should be winning? I mean, really, all honesty, that was Michigan's game to win. But he got arrogant. He got cocky. I mean, it's a certain way you bring yourself to rivalry games. And we saw that from their starting quarterback, Joe Milton.
You pointed out, I love it when you send me those communications. You shot that text of Joe Milton talking about, Antoine Simmons, he wasn't on my radar. Oh, man.
Exactly. And then Simmons' response was the most textbook response.
Oh, it was great.
I don't know what they do over there, but we make sure we highlight their best players and we prepare for
our opponents.
That was the whole point.
Not only did his play against Michigan take his draft stock up, I would be willing to bet that his comments, for whatever it's worth, inch his draft stock up a little bit more. Because a GM, a director of scouting is saying, all right, I need that kid. Because that kid is going to come in here and play against a team that's probably a competitor, and they're going to have somebody. He say, it don't matter to me. It don't matter, man. And it couldn't be better. But what I would also like to say about, the underlying issue in America, which is always in some way or form race, despite how many people say, I don't want to talk about race or whatnot. But I just really wonder if part of the discuss is not only Michigan losing to its in-state rival, Michigan State, but how do people feel about, a black coach being the one to lead Michigan State to victory? I know people will downplay it. I know people say it's probably not an issue, but I think somewhere in there's a psychology that includes that too, that it was almost like, yeah, they mad that they lost to Michigan State, but it's almost kind of like, well, how can you lose to Michigan State right now? As if this coach, Mel Tucker, who has the same pedigree with the exception of playing in the Super Bowl than Jim Harbaugh. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. What's the biggest thing they tout for college coaches? Oh, he coached in the NFL. He was an NFL coach. Well, he got that pedigree. And that was obvious. And I think a lot of people said that basically Jim Harbaugh got out-coached. And the last thing I want to say on that, when you talk about the arrogance of the player, you kind of spoke on it earlier. You spoke of the arrogance of Jim Harbaugh. And there's no way that a coach's personality and character is not going to have a ripple effect to his players. It was evident. You know, Joe Milton could have said so many things like, you know what? If we did underestimate him, it's something we learned from. This is not good. I mean, there's so many things you can say that can put a bow on a win or a loss. You can win, whether it's in sports or in life, but you can win ugly. You can win and say things that make people wish you didn't win. Or you can lose. You can lose in life and it still be a L in the column. But people can say, you know what, I take my hat off to you. Perfect example was when Devin Booker lit up the Boston Celtics a couple seasons ago for like 70 points. And once the Celtics knew that they won the game, they stayed in Madison, stayed in TD Arena just to see him score, and they applauded him. I remember, I think it was maybe Kentucky, was it versus Mississippi State? I can't remember who it was. It was in basketball, Terry, and these guys played like a double overtime game to the point where the home team stood on their feet and applauded the team that lost because it was hard fought. So I say that to say, we talk about Jim Harbaugh, and I'm a Jim Harbaugh fan, man. I've come in contact with Coach Harbaugh. He lights up the room, and all those things, but it doesn't seem to translate. But I really think, and I don't even think it's a good reason why, but I think that this loss to Michigan State by first-year head coach Mel Tucker, an African-American coach, is really going to make people say he may not be the man for the job. And I'll go there, Terry. I'll go there, and I think it's appropriate for the context we're having in the world right now, because the people feel that that's not a sign of superiority, that you're supposed to be this great white coach at this well-known white institution and you're losing to a black man. Now, some may say, Lindsay, that argument has no place, but I'm willing to bet that there's a psychology to go, only because when the 5-5 had their documentary, Terry, and they talked about all the hate mail that they got and how people signed it and signed their name on some racist mail, and they signed the year they graduated from Michigan. So I say I like to say is this wasn't just a beatdown. This was a serious psychological blow. And if people was on that Trump train on top of that, going for Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, all of their thoughts of superiority have gone away. Now, I know that was a little bit different from what the immediate topic was, but I think there's a space for that discussion, whether it's here at a later date. And guess what? Having our own platform, I can bring it up and say it. So that's that.
Right. And I like just to dive in deeper about the Michigan kind of the way of going as a coach. I mean, your job is to win the Big Ten and compete for national championships. Not necessarily win national championships, but your job is to beat those teams. You know what I mean? Because, I mean, if you think about it, losing to MSU and losing to Ohio State, losing to Penn State, possibly maybe in the future, then the big game against Indiana, we're talking about recruiting battles. I mean, the Big Ten, I feel like every game in the Big Ten is a recruiting battle kind of game. Because like if Ohio State,
the SEC, yeah,
exactly, yeah. Because I mean, if you got like MSU showing, we building right now. Coach Tucker got a culture that he's establishing here, and they beat Michigan, and then they go on and beat Iowa and then Indiana coming up. It's like, oh, like what's going on over there? You know what I'm saying? It's new. They don't got the players exactly how they want them yet, and they're still growing. There's time to grow. But then again, as an athlete, like myself, and I want to grow. And I like that attitude that Coach Tucker brings, I love the gritty attitude, the blue collar attitude, coming into the game and just working hard and coming as a team. That attracts people. Like no one wants to be around, and I hate to say it, but Coach Harbaugh has that the way of thinking of like, I'm better than that. I'm better than you. And you can just see that even with Coach Day at Ohio State.
When they say we're Michigan, it's like one word. Yeah. And it can be attractive to a degree, but that alone does not bring substance. And that's what you're talking about.
And on Harbaugh's record of being 3-3 versus Michigan State, I mean, there were years where the games that he won, you could argue that those were MSU bright spots. But then when you have games where they're about the same caliber team, he doesn't come up on the winning sides. So,
and then, I think it's not really a question for many people about should he keep the job. But then there's a financial issue. Yeah, they have some great alumni, but it's going to seriously cost to buy him out. I don't know the update, and I have to do my research on it, but I know that's been part of the discussion when you have national talking heads who are Michigan alums, and they're going off about how horrible this is. But they're like, we can't afford to get rid of them. So it's almost like, I think that is why the tone has always been from the Michigan faithful is, it's going to keep working because they leverage the farm for that. And again, rightfully so. Who would have said years ago, oh, Jim Harbaugh is a bust? I mean, you saw him take a team to the Super Bowl, probably one of the most dramatic things. And I still say the mob was involved in that Super Bowl when the lights went out at the Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Change that up. Vegas in effect. But here we are right now where there are chinks in his armor, and there's nothing to put a chink in your armor like not only not competing for a national championship, but losing to your rival. I've been told years ago there's always two records that you have. You have your regular season Big Ten record, and you have your record against Michigan or Michigan State. And in particular, it's funny because they can argue that Michigan State is supposed to always try to compete with the chance of beating Big Brother Michigan. But as of late now, Michigan is being owned by them. And what I do not want to happen is, despite Michigan State's success, I don't want Coach Mel Tucker to be slighted. I want it to be regarded that he coached a heck of a game. And even the local media, Terry, are even ready to say that they want to call Mel Tucker's comeback game one of the biggest turnarounds in the coach's opening season. I mean, they're talking about this from a historic standpoint. To lose to the lowest rated team in your conference, and then to turn around and come back and beat your in-state rival. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like he went from, he was saying it in the pressers. He was saying, hey, the biggest achievement comes between your first and second game. And Cal's like, yeah, right, coach, we'll see. But look at that. He went from 7 turnovers to 0, and handled that decisively. So I think it remains to be seen. I think there's going to be a close eye watched on the rest of the season for Michigan. But here's a question I posed to you, Terry, and I know this is crazy asking an Ohio State diehard fan any advice about Michigan football, but I want to make you put on your sports analyst hat, okay? I want to make you try to deal with that bias that you can't help based on your connection to Columbus, Ohio. But if he was out, who would you get? Who would you get to replace Jim Harbaugh right now in Michigan within the next 12 to 24 months? I mean, I'm just saying, who's out there, who's available, who can do a better job, who are they willing to give that, and maybe I shouldn't ask you. You probably can't help your bias. You probably would suggest somebody that would just muck up the situation even more. But again, what do they do? Who do you get? I mean, what do they do, Terry?
That's a good question. I think first, before we even, I personally believe that before you get rid of anyone, I think you gotta go and establish what is the cause. So I think a lot of the cause is the arrogance, the lack of preparation. We heard it in the press conference. So I mean, I think for Harbaugh to stay, I think he needs to do some looking in the mirror and wake up from the "this is Michigan" kind of dream that he's having, and we're supposed to be here, we're supposed to be winning. Because I mean, he's gonna have to wake up really quick. I hope that MSU game. I hope that's a wake up call, because they have Indiana, and then they got Wisconsin. So I mean, the Wisconsin game, I know we got. I mean, hopefully they're able to play, but Indiana's been hot. I mean, they're 2-0 right now.
Yeah, Indiana's an up-and-coming program, and people was really watching Indiana last season. You're right. Whether Wisconsin plays or not, the thing is, Wisconsin always compete. I was fortunate to go to Wisconsin versus Michigan State last season in Camp Randall, and let me tell you something, Terry. Them suckers didn't tell me how they get down, man. I told you late in the game they always play the song "Jump Around," and the stadium starts to shake, and I'm in there like, what's going on? But you're right, man. So I think when they won against Michigan, when Michigan beat Minnesota, people were really speaking highly of PJ Fleck and what he had done with the program. But you have to admit, you have to also recognize, how that goes. You lose so many players within the season, you got a totally different team. So I think the eyes are going to be on him. I think that he's going to be basically, without being said, on the proverbial hot seat. But the question really becomes, it's one thing to get rid of him, but what do you do? Who do you bring in? And who's willing to take on that pressure? Yeah, they can go after that bag to get the money that they're going to offer. But who? I mean, I'm just trying to think. I'm just trying to even starting with the NFL, unless they go and get a low-key NFL coach. That's just a quick thought. Because I think there will be so much scrutiny on a college coach, short of Nick Saban coming over, or no, Coach O at LSU. But But you kind of said it though when you talked about the difference, the issues that the flags for Michigan right now with the losing, the arrogance and the lack of preparation. I think the arrogance is a non-issue because the arrogance comes with Michigan because Michigan has that air. That's part of it, and I think that's why he's going to always stand on that. But the lack of preparation is their election of duty. If your team is not preparing and your star quarterback, and the only pass I'll give, no pun intended, the only pass I'll give Joe Milton is that he's a first-year starter in that regard. But that was a horrible statement to make. That speaks to the culture of that team. That's assuming that we're going to beat these guys just because, and look what happened to you. You came in there and you let a hungry dog just chew you to bits and just pick you apart. You had that freshman Ricky White balling out of control. It's probably Rocky Lombardi's best visual passing game, I would say. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yardage, but I was like, Rocky let it go like that. He was just letting it go. And it really did probably more than anything. What he did is, unbeknownst, he just solidified the tenure of Coach Mel Tucker. Because like you said, everybody like, Mel Tucker's good with me. That man lost a big game, lost the game, came back and won the biggest game, and we're good with it. And I even like to add that people like Connor Hayward, who was at one point in the transfer portal, over the summer, has been able to make his way back around. I remember talking to him too in that weekly press conference. He talked about the social media and how he had to get rid of Twitter because so many people were down on him. But I think it's such a great story, Terry, that you can talk about how Connor Haywood, who I used to see in practice, Terry, he had his head down, man. I mean, I had to even tell him at one point, man, keep your nose up like your nose bleeding, because he was really having a tough time, during the latter part of last season. But to turn around and make those scores in the Michigan game and seeing him light up and smile is a great thing. So a lot of great things happening with Michigan State football and not so much Michigan.
Right. I just to go with your question, I thought so. A coach that I think would be a long shot, but it could work. So Cincinnati football has been doing really well lately, and I think off the record, maybe if Harbaugh leaves, maybe bring in Luke Fickell as maybe because I mean, to get Fickell to leave, obviously what he's established at Cincinnati has been great, but I think it's gonna take some money. And it's going to take, a lot of like facilities thrown at him and seeing what I can really build here. And we've seen him do it in Cincinnati. So now it makes me bring because MSU tried to get him, but he wasn't really biting. But then maybe that little prestige of Michigan might make him bite that worm and go.
Prestige part. I thought Fickell was holding out for a possible Notre Dame opportunity. I thought he was holding out for that because Notre Dame was kind of, hanging in the balance a little bit, and I thought he may have been holding out for that opportunity. I believe he's Catholic with a big family. Now, if it was potentially Michigan out there, I don't argue that. But then the sad part about this, when you have a coach like Jim Harbaugh with such a big personality, it's going to be so much scrutiny on whoever you bring in. Because either you bring in a similar personality and it's one and the same and no substance, or you bring someone in with a low-key personality and people don't really focus on the track record. Because I don't care what you say, man, we're attracted to sexy, we're attracted to loud, we're attracted to big, especially programs like this. Because, again, that Michigan slogan didn't just start with him. Everybody was on that. Oh, man, we're Michigan.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's Michigan. That's from an academic standpoint, rightfully so. And in the past, from an academic, from an athletic standpoint, even when you talk about the recruiting battle that Juwan Howard is winning right now, and I think that's going to be a great thing to talk about when basketball season comes around. But it's the same type of thing, So we're doing really good with time, man. It looks like we got probably exactly 30 minutes to go. I think that's really good because the additional topics you have, 3 real great topics, talking about turning the page and talking about the election. Talking about LeBron James and of course his man Rich Paul. So if you're good with that, do you want to transition and start talking about some of these election topics?
Oh yeah. I mean, this election has been, I would say it's like a game 7 kind of vibe. Where it's everybody's antsy and checking their phones every.
I'm checking right now. I'm checking in to see where we at right now.
And everyone is waking up and checking the score of the big game. It's like one of them feels. And I mean, we're seeing a lot of voters voting totals switch up, and I'm surprised to see Georgia and North Carolina, really battle it out and maybe be blue. But as of right now, they're probably still red right now. Last time I checked, but
Southern states is almost to be expected.
Right.
It's almost to be expected. But please continue.
But yeah, so I mean, just hearing that and knowing, just based off of my knowledge, I knew that people didn't really rub off with Hillary Clinton in the past in 2016. But then coming in today and having a different guy, a different person like Biden come in, I knew that he can get more of those votes that Hillary really couldn't attract. So just knowing that, I knew he could get Wisconsin. Michigan surprised me. Your city, Detroit came in clutch. I mean, with those
Yeah.
the early in ballots and counting up the Metro Detroit area, really started bringing them up and making Michigan blue. So I mean, it was really nice to see those predominantly black, cities, really come up and support. Lansing did really good, voting, coming out, voter turnout. I mean, the whole city, with the clerk and the clerk's office, that's where I voted on Monday. Just really just bringing people a comfortable environment. I remember this lady, I came in, I walked in, and I like hesitated because I saw her like kind of speed walking. So I was like, let me follow her. My mom stayed in the car. I was like, let me follow her and see what she's doing. She saw me stop and she instantly was like, what's going on? You don't want to vote anymore? I was like, no, I was just gonna see what you was doing and then come after you too. And she was like, well, I'm a first time voter too. And I was like, hey, well then we gonna do it together. So I mean, it's just that sense of like, what you doing? You're supposed to be over here voting. I'm like, hey, I'm just trying to see what's going on here. But I mean, the enthusiasm was unreal, and it felt good to be a first time voter, especially during these times.
That's awesome, man. You earned that right. I laugh. I think back to my first time voting many years ago, and I'm just appreciative of my mother, Patricia Bryant. She's going back to her maiden name right now. Just instilling that in us, and your parents have done an excellent job. Terry McCord and your mom as well, doing great things. Kelly, and it's appreciated. But this election, man, I think what happened is we weren't prepared because we're so conditioned, even with you not having voted until now, so conditioned to getting the results at the end of the night.
Yeah.
That if you stay up late, like it's an NBA Finals game, you stay up, you'll see it roll in. And pretty soon, right after the polls close, you'll start getting that idea. But in this particular case, unbeknownst, I didn't think about it, but because so many people did early voting,
right.
In my opinion, President Trump lost before Election Day.
Oh, yeah.
This election day that brought us together. So what we saw was just the day of results and whatnot. Now we're seeing, I mean, CNN has Biden at 254, but heck, the Free Press got him at 264.
I saw that.
Like, you only need 6 more. Yeah, I'm like, go Free Press, go Free Press. And then, it's interesting. I thought about this with even all this stuff happening with this national election. Michigan is still, on the radar. No pun intended, right? No play on that term, but they are because they're trying to say, stop the vote in Detroit. A judge has just thrown out President Trump's lawsuit in Michigan. I don't know if you saw that.
Good.
So there's no legal basis. They're like, dog, this was already done. Like, these votes are counted. But I've even heard things that people are trying to rile up and start stuff. Now, if this man wants to get on national television and make some disparaging remarks and promote, some type of clash and conflict, shame on him. I mean, at the end of the day, with all the stuff he's done that's been questionable, shame on him. And I really want to shout out, Vice President Joe Biden, who we all agree is probably going to be the next president of the United States in a very short amount of time, for the remarks that he made. He came and made some remarks, man, that was so what you call presidential, man. Meaning he said, I'm going to fight just as hard for everyone who voted for me as well as everyone who did not vote for me. He said, because I'm an American president. And I think that's what we lost in Donald Trump. We saw him resorting to the infantile, immature, ignorant, if you ask me, behavior of just trying to play to a particular base that wasn't in the complete interest of America. Because what you did is you empowered people and you made it okay to be racist again. And not to say people don't have racist views, but I think there's something to be said about civility. All right, if you're not feeling me, dog, keep it moving. I don't mean you get to stand up and try to use the law enforcement to your advantage. So it'll be something to see. I'm glad that we're trending that way. I feel much better. It has done something for my mental health. That doesn't mean you won't have a population of people who are riled up. But I also say, man, this makes sense for people like back to sit down. Like if Trump being mad at his attorneys right now and throwing things at the wall, saying stop counting in Michigan, but keep counting here and all that, people like, man, sit down. And I saw some talking heads that said this, and I agree. And I'll defer to you right now. They say this is time for other Republican leaders to say, okay, Mr. President, we need to prepare for potential transfer of power. You need to really just accept this reality because nothing is about to change, man. And America came out. And the last thing I'll say, the one thing that did give me a little stress and anxiety, it wasn't that I thought that Trump was going to win or do something, is that I was depressed at how close it was. But I think we all misread that because what we saw again was election day results that made it look closer than what it is. Because now, man, he had won Michigan by 10,000 votes 4 years ago. He got smashed, man, by like 60,000 plus votes. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's clearly identifiable where people were going. So please, what do you think?
I think just going off the record-setting year for voter turnout, I think that was really key. And
especially young
just
people like you, Terry.
Yep, and I knew that Gen Z was gonna come out strong. I mean, we've been talking about voting since I was able to comprehend what a vote was. So I mean, it's been cool to see that turnout come out. Because I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at Trump's votes in 2016, they were a lot lower than Romney's and McCain's, and so voter turnout last year was horrible. I mean, we saw voter turnout was low. And people were proud to say I didn't vote, and now we're coming in today and we see how valuable voting is. I mean we're like it's like split percentages. I seen the percentage was like 49.3 and 49.5, and all these votes coming together. And I think people are finally starting to realize the value in voting. And a lot of people are like, well, it's the electoral college, and I understand that, but if everyone says, well, my vote is not going to matter, and that's 30 people, that's 30 votes that we don't have to go to contribute to winning your state. And so I think, just having the youth carry that kind of the attitude of voting and feeling that empowerment of voting, like myself, it was really cool. And I think it leads to future years in the election, wanting and demanding more from your candidates. And, as a Black community, I stress that a lot. We gotta demand more from them. We're always like kind of the second hand or get the leftovers, left handouts, so I mean, we're not asking for handouts, but we're asking, for us to be looked upon and as equal. And so I think this is very key that we see, cities like Detroit, Chicago, Lansing, African Americans, minorities, are in Lansing, we're very diverse. We have a diverse base at Eastern. I think last time I checked, I think we're like the 8th most diverse and diverse school in the state of Michigan. Wow. So I think just seeing them come up and be able to vote, I think, like I told you the last show, I mean, voter registration was at my school early. I mean, they were telling anybody, hey, register to vote. And I think it's just a good outlook for present years, having people like this that are being so encouraged and wanting to get into politics like myself.
Right. No, it's good, man. I'm really happy for you that you had that experience. And again, me being heavily engaged with the political process, just as a citizen and as a former employee of the state of Michigan with Governor Jennifer Granholm, yeah, I can easily look past that because I've been so entrenched in politics. But you said some great things, man, as it relates to young people getting out and being involved, especially 2 words you said, feeling, the attitude and feeling empowered. And I think one thing that you voting does, it gives you skin in the game, Terry. It allows you to lean in on these conversations. It allows you to have, the ability to get up and voice your voice, not just your vote, but you to be able to contribute to conversations because you have gone through the process of being a full-fledged, engaged citizen of the United States. And for those who say their vote don't count, so be it. But that's just like saying my voice don't count. So if I'm in a crowded room and something's going on, I got to speak up for myself. You're going to have to hear me for me to speak up for myself, speak up for my daughter, speak up for my family, my loved ones, and all that. So I applaud you, Terry, for not believing the hype and getting caught up because I think voting not only keeps you engaged as a citizen, it'll make you more likely just to be a productive person in what's going on, even if your political views differ from someone else's. Like, I don't disagree. I'll tell you a quick story. I was in a program when I was with the governor's administration called MPLP, the Michigan Political Leadership Program. Very prestigious program. I was a fellow. So myself and 11 other people from all over the state who were considered people with very positive political futures, whether it was running for office or taking on influential roles in politics and government, we were brought together over like a 10-week period. And every weekend we would go to a different part of the state. We would get some policy courses, and then it would be cool because we would all come together in the hospitality suite. And in the hospitality, man, anything goes. And I tell you what, Terry, I found out most people who I end up befriending who are on the other side of the political aisle, me growing up a Democrat, still voting Democratic, being Republicans, we realized that we had so much in common. We just had some slight differences with some political things. And every situation I was in, Terry, with these individuals, it had everything to do with how they grew up and where they grew up at and what was going on with them. And I'll never forget, man, I had one guy, never forget Michael Rockholz. He eventually ran for superintendent, his supervisor of the county he was in. He was in a northern county. I never forget this, white conservative dude coming up to me and say, Lindsay, my kids are listening to rap and I don't know what to do. I was like, Mike, I said, they listening to rap. They said they love it. So I'm saying, hey man, it's cool. But even that alone made him just take a deep breath and step back. And also, these are people that I had some of the best political relationships with. Like last thing, one of my guys, my go-to guy, worked for one of the Republican senators, on the banking commission, Senator Boer. And my guy worked for him, and I would call him all the time, and he would call me, and it would be so cool, Terry, when it would be like this at the time. I was Governor Granholm's deputy director for legislative affairs. So for me to be able to get a call from my guy Patrick on the Republican side of things, who was a mover and shaker, saying, Lindsay, what's up with this bill? Or this is what we're trying to do. What can we do with this? Or I could call him like, hey Patrick, this is what we're thinking about. I want to give you a heads up. And it was like that, man. I think that could be done on a larger level. I don't think that in America you have to give up your political views, but you have to have a level of understanding and the ability to be able to communicate. So people will have to realize there has to be unification. And the comment that I made to Coach Tucker early on is that he started out his press conference statements with calling for unity and saying no matter who you vote for, we need to come together as one. And that's what we need to be at. We've had 4 years of this disenfranchisement, this white nationalist push. And now we're saying that's not the America that we chose to live in. And that's not the America, Terry, that you're choosing to live in. Because more than me, as a middle-aged male and parent, you being the future, just like you're the future of this podcast, you're the future of these discussions, you're the future of America and the world, Terry, and your views matter. And I'm grateful that there's young people like you that are out here stepping up, making sure your voice is heard and making sure your vote is counting. I applaud you for that.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, it just goes without saying. The youth is supposed to take the wisdom and ask questions from the generation before, and then hopefully build on and create a future and positive generation, and so we can pass on to our kids, their kids, and then my great grandkids. So I mean, it's all a process, and I think 4 years has been enough of the division, and I think it's really key for us to push the phrase of unity. And I think a lot of times, because I like to listen to the other side's base too, to kind of like build my argument.
Sure.
And so I hear a lot of times they're talking about unity. They're saying the unity way of like, why do they do that? Why aren't they trying to unite with us? And it's like, honestly, if they're gonna say that, then when we come and when Biden is put as president, the way it's looking right now, when he becomes president and he's pushing unity, I want the same energy, whenever he's pushing unity and you guys continuously want to stay out and be quote unquote patriots.
Yeah.
I mean,
keep that same energy, Terry. What you say?
Yeah. I mean, just keep the same energy. I mean, this is a president that's taking the approach. So like, he's not feeding into, any side. I mean, he's coming off with the first, I think I've heard him say a lot on his campaign journey was unity, bringing this country together. And I think that's what we need. I mean, every country needs a strong base of civilians that feel prideful. I mean, me, myself, I love this country, but do I love how we react and how we do different things? No. And that me loving this country puts me in that position to where I'm going to critique it heavily so that everyone can have those same opportunities. Everyone can live in those same, everyone can live in those same safe conditions. That's something I'm going to continue to push because I love this country so much. But then when we have patriots that say they love it so much and aren't willing to hear the other side, aren't willing to lend a hand, aren't willing to listen out and just put their views and their ego aside for a second and accept differences, that's where, we have a problem. And that's where I'm going to have a problem. I don't have problems with any political beliefs, but when you're running into not treating this person fairly and where racism comes a debatable topic, that's where we have a problem. I think first just unifying, and with with Vice President Biden really pushing that is very key for the next 4 years of our country before we do anything economically, healthcare, like any social programs. We got to unite together for this to all work.
Yeah, you're really good, man. As we kind of transition on this topic, Vice President Biden, potentially soon to be President-elect Biden, talking about unity. And just recently, as you shared with me at a rally, you have, current President Trump, leading chants saying LeBron James sucks, and here it is, we're dealing with a global pandemic, and many could agree that, America is not really leading the way as it relates to trying to resolve this and make things happen. And you got this guy talking about a basketball player. Now, it's funny, we can always say, oh, LeBron James, he's just a basketball player. But I'll say, well, if he's just a basketball player, why do you feel the need to have to even talk about him? I'll never forget
Exactly.
John McCain, when he challenged people who said disparaging things about Barack Obama. It almost gets me emotional, man, because I remember this woman was saying, well, he's a Muslim. And then John McCain grabbed the microphone, and it probably lost him the election at that point. He grabbed the microphone from her and said, no, he's not a Muslim, and he's a decent man. And they hissed and booed him. Some did. But that same civility that you're talking about, Terry, it's unfortunate that when it's displayed in these conservative spaces sometimes, people don't want to hear that. And I think the reality is part of it, man. We're going to continue to have a faction of this country that wants resistance, that wants to have armed conflict and do all that. But I think it's going to take individuals like me and you to have cooler heads to prevail, not at all to be trampled on, not at all to be taken advantage of. We want to protect our family, protect ourselves, but you're going to always have that unrest. You're going to always have that group that feels that way. And I think it's amazing that LeBron James and all the great things he's doing is being, heckled by a political party and an American president compared to at one point he being, just held in high regard. It's like LeBron playing for the Miami Heat again. And they hating on him. You know what I'm saying? He's a bad guy again.
Exactly. And the funny thing though, the irony in that is in 2013 when LeBron won Athlete of the Year at the ESPYs, Trump tweeted out, "Congratulations, LeBron James, for winning Athlete of the Year. LeBron is also a great guy." And I thought that was funny, for somebody to despise him so much now, they'd be like, "Oh, back then you was cool, but then now that you're speaking out for your people and really taking the whole thing and getting people to vote, I'm not really messing with you no more." So it's just funny how that changed.
I mean, it's something, man. I'll keep wearing the black, I'll keep wearing my kufi and speaking on the Black Power part when it relates to the theme we have in today's show is that you've had successful individuals, African American men like Coach Mel Tucker, and though no one has said anything disparaging, and I am the one that's making it about race in this discussion, I am putting that out there. But you had the subtle things about, okay, is it because he's black he gets criticized? Well, because he's black, people have issue when he does something that's great. Same thing with LeBron. This brother got a school, man. I promise he's doing great things. He's sending kids to college. I mean, what scandal have you ever heard of? I remember even years ago while he was still in Cleveland the first time, GQ did an article on him and they followed him in Las Vegas with his homeboys. He said all they did was walk around cracking jokes. They didn't drink. They went in and did their thing. They made their move. It's like, damn, America, you claim, you quick to point out all this imagery of where African American men fall short by your standards. You quick to point all this out. You quick to say Detroit is the most, worst run city in the Western Hemisphere per Fox News, putting that narrative out. You talk about black people, but when you got a brother like LeBron James, man, who's above reproach, the only thing you can be mad at him about is the influence he has over the NBA. And who cares? The brother is, in his, he's 35 years old, 17th season. He lives in the NBA Finals. He's married to his high school sweetheart. My goodness, if he was white, they want him to run for president. And I almost want to say it's because of his greatness that you have someone like a Donald Trump leading a negative charge. You have Fox News saying negative things because now that they've created this narrative, Terry, the idea that, and I'm sure the idea is crossed LeBron James' mind if I ran for president, that I can do it and that I can achieve because I have an excellent history of doing well. And Donald Trump has only done anything. The only thing he's done is showed us that anybody can run for president. So my point being is that I just really want our listeners, and shout out to the Streets is Talking Podcast Network, Don Houston and Clarence, our board, for all the great work they're doing. But I just really want our listeners on all the platforms just really think about that. People. LeBron James must be doing some great work if a sitting president who is being challenged not to seek to receive a re-election has to speak this man's name to get some cachet to potentially get him over the hump. He has to hate on this brother. LeBron James has done nothing hate-worthy. I don't even care if you don't like him as a basketball player. This man has displayed nothing but greatness. And if you want to get into the argument about the GOAT, you can have your opinion. But I'll give him GOAT status over Jordan for all the things he's done. Jordan was a fierce competitor, and we learned a great deal. But we also know in sports that there are some concerns about what that does to a person's mental, their mental status, what it does to the relationships. How many people in Jordan's life will, if he chose to, he have to go back and rectify some relationships. I'm not saying he didn't do what he had to do to get evicted, but I think that sometimes we got to step back and look at the entire package and what the humanity that a person promotes. And that's what LeBron James has done. And it also, and I want to get your thoughts before we go, talks about his business manager and his agent, Rich Paul, who is the same type of vitriol, not from the president, but from other agents, So I'll put a pin in it right there, and I'll let you kind of help us because we got about less than 10 minutes. We've been flowing really with this, but I definitely want to better get to this latter part, talking about LeBron, but of course, super agent Rich Paul of Clutch Sports.
So, for all the listeners, Rich Paul, LeBron's agent of Clutch Sports, he hosted a pro day. Due to COVID, they weren't able to have a traditional draft combine and have teams visit them as much as they would like and ask those questions and have the draft interviews. So, Rich Paul hosted a draft day, hosted a pro day for Tyrese Maxey and Anthony Edwards. Some high quality guys. Anthony Edwards projected maybe number one. I'm guessing now after his performance on the pro day.
More than
so you got a guy, Rich Paul, sees talent and is doing what he needs to do to get them out there. Anthony Edwards is not giving a percentage of his earnings to not get the best. So knowing how Rich Paul and the guys who he's with right now, he's with guys like Draymond, Trae Young, Ben Simmons, AD. Knowing that this guy has the best interest for me, we saw Anthony Davis, he got where he wanted, and he got him a chip in a year. So, just growing up, and these guys like Maxey and Edwards growing up in the league and seeing this guy take care of his people. Sadly, I hate to say it, he got Tristan Thompson and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope some money. I wouldn't say they really deserve that much money because
KCP, I would argue. But they got chips though. When Tristan got the tip,
that's true.
And KCP on this one, I think they earned it on the back end because they did say KCP was stealing money for a long time.
I would say that, and Tristan Thompson, man. 80 million, like just about 80 mil almost right now, and with them Cavs right now. I'm a Cavs fan, but come on, man. He put us in a little hole, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's just the intimidating factor he brings to owners to like, I'm gonna get my players what they want. And the guy who grew up, when him and LeBron first met, LeBron saw him grinding, hustling. LeBron met him when he was selling throwback jerseys. LeBron asked him, was like, hey, where you get that Warren Moon jersey from? And that's how it started.
I love that story.
And then so you got a guy gritty, hustling out here, trying to get his name out here and helping other guys get to where they want to go. Of course, you're going to see some people hate because they're not doing as well as him. You're making a dynasty of Clutch Sports.
Well, it's sad, man. And I'm going to hammer this for this episode, man. The narrative of Black excellence being always, undercut. Like you said, this brother, met LeBron on the come up. They was hustling jerseys, said they really hit it off. They respected each other. LeBron instantly looked up to him and respected him. And I can relate to that, man. I can relate to a young brother being out here, following your passion, following your grind and doing that. And if I chose to be Rich Paul for Halloween, this would be my Rich Paul costume. This is how he be.
He always doing that.
This is Rich Paul right here making it happen, though. But, if he was white, would we be having this conversation, Terry? Would he be considered, this guy is the next Drew Rosenthal. This guy is the next, who was Mike's agent? David Falk. I met David Falk's daughter. She was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Down in D.C. But, yeah, if he was white, oh, this guy is the guy to watch, but now it's always just scrutiny. And then you get scrutiny from what? Anonymous agent sources. On anonymous agent said, well, you can't put your name on and say something. They just hate on this brother. Here's another thing, man. How could the best player, one of the best players of all time, be your close personal friend and you not leverage that to your advantage? I never forget, I was in politics and I was an intern for Mayor Archer, the city of Detroit. Shout out to Mayor Archer. And there was this proposal going forward through the city council where they were trying to do what's called, eminent domain. I don't want to get too much into the poly stuff because the top is that, but it's basically the city can come in and say, Terry, we're going to take this area where you live. We're going to say the city needs this for whatever purpose they need it for, economic purposes, and we're going to move you guys out. Now that's what happened. And that does happen, and people protested that. But the mayor's son, Dennis Archer Jr., was a fiduciary in the organization that was going to benefit. So the company that was going to sell homes, the mayor's son was a part of. And I'll never forget the mayor said this. He said, what good am I as a father if I can't do something to help my son? Now, it wasn't illegal. Some call it immoral. But the fact that a black man has to say this, but America do it all the time. How many kids are getting things passed down? And Rich Paul is worth $100 million right now. This is one generation. How many Rich Pauls have been? Look at the relationship with someone like who's the current GM, Rob Pelinka. He had worked with Aaron Tellum, who was Kobe's agent. So they had worked and built this relationship for so long, and look how they've transitioned to where Aaron eventually left, and Rob Pelinka took over as Kobe agent to eventually become the GM of the Lakers to win a national championship. And nobody's talking nepotism, even though they're not fans. Like nobody's talking about those relationships. But here Rich Paul is, and you don't even hear any people off the Rich Paul coaching tree, if you will. You don't know who's the heir apparent to Rich Paul. He's not putting nobody on. This brother is working probably, 100 hours a week, to put things together, and people are still criticized. I got issues with that, man.
I do too. And I mean, it just goes to say, we talk about a lot, in the Black community about building generational wealth, generation, of wealth for pass down your money to your kids, passing it from your kids to their kids. I mean, building a legacy, the family legacy. And I think, we see a lot of times where Caucasian families are doing that. And we're like behind the ball. I mean, this has been going on since
they do it. With the farming. They do it, and it's not even questioned.
Oh, yeah.
When we have something we're trying to build, it turns into a Rosewood. It turns into a Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street where it gets burned to the ground. So what's happening right now, in my view, and I'll say this statement, people are literally trying to burn Rich Paul's reputation to the ground. This brother has violated no laws. This brother has, broken no laws. He's been creative. He's doing what he can. They're saying it gives him an added advantage. He can't help the fact that he's friends with one of the greatest basketball players in the world, and he's empowering him just like everybody else benefits. Hell, the president's son worked for him. I mean, come on, the president's son and his daughter and his son. His whole inner circle, the only people who are probably directly responsible for the trajectory of this country are his family. Same type of situation. But Rich Paul get out here and do an honest, hard day's work, and he's being, called out by anonymous sources. That's weak to me.
I mean, hey, he ain't doing something too wrong. I mean, if everybody want to sign with him, all these top players and because I mean, it goes without saying, this dude is building that new prestige of clutch sports, and LeBron has a major thing to do with that. But you see guys like Trae Young, who's getting up there, Ben Simmons, and like different players that are coming up, that are on the come up, and that are starting to make their money, and younger players are starting to see that, and they understand the different. And signing AD a year ago was key too. Another young star who is building his own reputation in the league, who has built his reputation, but now an NBA champion, Anthony Davis. So I mean, like the guys that Rich Paul has put on as their being their agent, them winning championships, and then them getting paid, that puts you on a different pedestal of different agents.
And to that point about getting paid, in the interest of time too, Terry, Rich Paul clients at Clutch Sports, all of them receive somewhat 90% of the pay during the pandemic. When other guys wasn't getting paid till they got back in the bubble, Clutch Sports was doing it. Terry, I'm looking at the time, and you've done an excellent job with giving us some topics that filled up our time like in the blink of an eye. We've gotten through an hour. Again, I want to shout out the Streets is Talking Podcast Network, which you will hear us on, as well as our social media platforms. I just want to thank you for all the hard work that you're doing. Thank you for being a first-time voter. I know this won't be your last. Thank you for the positive impact you're having on others. And I can't wait to be able to listen to your voice in the future when we look at supporting you and your podcast endeavors too. But with that, we're right on time. I want to cut us off right here, and I want to thank you. And on behalf of Terry McCord Jr., Coach Orlando Watkins over at Northwestern, this is Lindsey Hellison with the SPS Edge Show, and we see you guys next time.